Retail workers. What's the dumbest thing you've had to explain to a customer? Story 1. Busy afternoon at the grocery store, and I was stocking milk in the dairy section when a customer stormed up to me looking furious. She held up a gallon of milk and said, "Why is this expired? I just bought it today." I checked the date and calmly explained, "Ma'am, the milk expires next month. That's the date the milk will go bad." But she wasn't having it. She started ranting about how she doesn't understand why stores would sell milk that's already expired, and how she always gets the bad batches. I tried again slowly. The date on the carton is the last date you can drink the milk, not the day it was bottled. She stared at me like I was speaking another language and demanded to speak to a manager. The manager told her the same thing, and she still didn't believe us. She left in a huff, insisting we were lying to get her to buy spoiled milk. To this day, I can't believe someone thought a milk carton expired a month in advance. Story 2. I worked at an electronics store and had a guy come in, super frustrated. He slammed a remote on the counter and said, "I just bought this, and it's broken. It won't turn on my TV." I asked if he had tried changing the batteries, and he looked at me like I just insulted his intelligence. "Of course I did. I'm not stupid," he snapped, but I could tell something was off. So I asked to take a look at the remote. Turns out he had put the batteries in upside down. I flipped them around, handed the remote back to him, and suddenly the TV in the background turned on. The guy didn't even apologize or thank me. He just grabbed the remote and left, mumbling about how technology these days is too complicated. I couldn't believe he was so confident, even though the problem was completely his fault. Story 3. I work in a deli. My personal favorite that happened to me went as such. Customer: "Hi, I'd like some sliced chicken lunch meat. What you got?" Me: "We carry oven-roasted buffalo and garlic and herb." Customer: "You're not understanding me, boy. I want sliced chicken lunch meat. Now what you got?" Me: "Oven-roasted buffalo or garlic and herb." Customer: "You're still not getting me, son. I want sliced chicken lunch meat. Now tell me what you have, damn it." Me: "Oven-roasted chicken lunch meat. Buffalo chicken lunch meat. Garlic and herb chicken lunch meat." Customer: "Oh, give me some bologna." So I don't know how I didn't get in trouble for sassing that idiot. Story 4. So I've been working in retail footwear for a few years, and nothing beats the time this lady came in and asked for a size 9. Easy, right? I handed her the shoes, but she came back, saying, "These don't fit at all." I don't know why this store is so disorganized. I apologized, offered to size her up, and she agreed. After checking her feet, it turns out she was actually a size 8. I brought her an 8, and she said, "No, I need a size 9 to look like I'm taller." I explained that shoe sizes don't magically make you taller. It's just about the fit. She refused to accept this and said she had been buying size 9 shoes for years to give herself extra height. She stormed out, still convinced that we were the ones who didn't understand how shoes worked. I'm still scratching my head over that one. Story 5. A chicken is an animal. Therefore, it's not vegetarian. Worked in a vitamin store in college and was explaining to someone that vitamin D is extracted from lanolin in sheep's wool, so it depended on if you were vegan or not. And they hit me with fish and birds are not animals. The specific thing she said, "What about a chicken? It's not an animal, it's a fowl." My assistant manager told her something like, "Oh, well, remember the 20 questions game. Is it animal, mineral, or vegetable? A chicken isn't a mineral or vegetable." They left in a huff and made huge complaints about us. Me in particular, because I couldn't believe how stupid they were, and I have no poker face. I was not slash and not cut out for retail. Story 6. I spent 20+ minutes arguing with a middle-aged woman trying to return a double XL stack of men's underwear against policy once opened. I explained that if her husband had a 32-inch waist like me, she needed to buy him medium-size underwear. She eventually angrily shouted, "Look, he's got a huge package, and he needs double XL pants for it, but these keep falling down when he wears them." She would not accept my explanation that the tag size was related to his waist, not his package. She raged out of the shop, leaving the stack of pants behind. Story 7. I work the customer service desk at Walmart, and let me tell you, I've seen some ridiculous returns. But one day, a guy came in, wheeling a cart full of bottled water. He slammed his receipt down on the counter and said, "I need to return these. The water's broken." I blinked and asked, "What do you mean by broken?" He sighed like I was the dumb one and said, "It doesn't taste right. It's like the water isn't watery enough." At this point, I was stifling a laugh, but but I had to remain professional. I told him that the water was just regular bottled water, and maybe his tap water at home tasted different. But no, he was adamant that something was wrong with the water itself. He even opened one of the bottles in front of me and took a sip, grimacing like it was the worst thing he'd ever tasted. He demanded a refund, and while Walmart's return policy is pretty generous, even this was a stretch. Still, we processed the return just to get him out of there. As he wheeled away, I overheard him muttering about defective water. To this day, I wonder if he ever found water watery enough for his taste. Story 8. I worked at a department store, and one day a man came in to buy a vacuum cleaner. He picked one out, but when he got to the register and saw the total, he flipped out. "This is way too expensive," he shouted. I looked at the price tag, and it was exactly what was listed on the shelf, no surprises. I told him that the price was correct, but he kept ranting that vacuums shouldn't cost that much, and that he was being ripped off. I tried to offer him cheaper alternatives, but he wasn't interested. He wanted the most expensive model, just not for the listed price. He spent the next 15 minutes yelling at me, saying that the store was gouging him, and that vacuums should cost no more than $50, even though this one was clearly a high-end model. Eventually, my manager stepped in and offered him a discount just to calm him down. He took it, but left grumbling about how nothing is affordable anymore. Sometimes I wonder if people just don't understand how prices work. Story 9. I was working at GameStop when this guy came in, furious that the game he bought wasn't working. He slapped a copy of Call of Duty on the counter and said it wouldn't play on his system. I checked the box and realized he had bought the PlayStation version, but he owned an Xbox. Simple enough fix, right? So I explained to him that he had bought the wrong version and needed the Xbox one instead. He stared at me, dead serious, and said, "No, all video games work on every console. You're just trying to scam me." I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. I had to walk him through the fact that different consoles have different games, and buying a PlayStation game wouldn't magically work on his Xbox. He kept insisting that back in the day, all games work on all systems, and I had to explain that no, that's never been the case. It took about 20 minutes of arguing before he finally accepted a refund and bought the right version. As he left, he said, "This is why digital games are better." I couldn't help but laugh as he walked out. Dude really thought all games worked on all consoles. Story 10. At the restaurant I used to work at, we had a customer who ordered a well-done steak. No problem, right? The food came out, and not even 5 minutes later, he called me over, looking furious. He said, "This steak is raw." I glanced at the plate, and the steak was clearly cured and cooked all the way through. I asked him what he meant, and he cut it open to show me. It was bone-dry inside, definitely not raw. So I explained, "Sir, well-done steaks are fully cooked through, just like this." He shook his head and insisted that "well done" meant the steak should disappear, with no pink, no juice, no nothing, basically wanting it turned into ash. I had to explain that no, a well-done steak isn't supposed to vanish into thin air. He didn't believe me and asked to see a manager, who, of course, told him the same thing. The kicker? He sent the steak back 3 times until it was basically inedible. Story 11. Back in the day I worked at Safeway, and a woman walked up to my meat counter and started asking me where a specific sale item was, like $1 a pound chicken or something. I tell her that's not sale we have, and she starts screaming. You people always do this. You bait and you switch. You advertise one thing and then refuse to honor the price. Every single time I come here, and I'm sick of it. She then shoves the store ad in my face and aggressively points at the $1 a pound chicken on sale. "Ma'am, this is Safeway." "That's a Kroger ad." She looks at it and says, "Oh, boops," and walks out as I stand there just freaking baffled at what just happened. Also working in the meat department, every Thanksgiving morning, I would have to explain to at least 5 people that you cannot thaw and cook an 20-pound turkey by this evening. Story 12. This happened a while back when I worked at a specialty food store. A customer came up, holding a bottle of olive oil, looking confused. She asked, "So, how do I make this extra virgin? Does it need to be refrigerated or something?" I honestly thought she was joking at first, but nope. She was dead serious. I explained that the term extra virgin refers to the oil's quality and how it's made, not something you can change at home. She didn't seem to get it, and she kept asking if there was some sort of process she needed to do to activate the virgin part. After a long, awkward conversation about olive oil production, she finally nodded, but I could tell she was still a little skeptical. She left, and I'm pretty sure she's still out there somewhere, trying to figure out how to make her olive oil more virgin. Story 13. That watermelons don't grow on trees. And this was back in the days before these personal-sized seedless watermelons, back when they were like 20 pounds. A woman was complaining that all of the watermelons were flat on one side and kind of yellow. I told her that was the side that was on the ground. She looked angry and surprised and asked, "What do you mean, on the ground?" Like I was admitting to some secret, that we leave the produce sitting on the ground out back, or something. Story 14. Working at Target in the produce section was usually pretty chill, until one day a woman stormed over, holding a bag of apples like they had personally wronged her. She shoved the bag in my face and said, "These apples are rotten. Why do you people sell this crap?" I looked at the apples, and they were fine. No bruises, no discoloration, just perfectly normal apples. Confused, I asked her what was wrong with them. She pointed at the expiration date on the bag and yelled, "They're expired. Look at the date." Now, produce doesn't typically have an expiration date like milk or packaged food, but I realized she was looking at the shipping date. I explained that this was just the day the apples were delivered to the store, not when they were going to spoil. She didn't get it and kept insisting we were selling expired fruit. I had to call over my supervisor to back me up, and even then, she demanded a refund for her rotten apples. We eventually gave it to her just to make her go away. She left muttering that Target was selling old fruit to poison people. I still can't believe someone thought apples had an exact expiration date like a can of soup. Story 15. As a cashier, when someone is paying cash, "Hey, if you can give me a penny or a nickel, I can give you a whole paper dollar back as change." If your total was $19.10 and you gave me a $20, give me $20.10 and I can give you a dollar bill for change, rather than you carrying pesky spare change around. This was back in the late 90s or early zeros. I know this confused people back then. It would totally explode someone's brain now. Story 16. I used to work at an electronics store, and one time a woman came in holding a TV remote. She slammed it on the counter and said, "This remote doesn't work. I want a new one." I asked if she had replaced the batteries. She stared at me for a second and said, "Why would I need to do that?" I politely explained that sometimes remotes stop working when the batteries die. She didn't believe me and insisted we had sold her a defective TV. After I showed her how to change the batteries, she looked at me like I'd just invented fire. She left without a word. Story 17. Worked in car parking customer service for a few years. One day, a lady came up to the desk, furious, because she was being charged for an hour and a half instead of being let out for free under the half-an-hour free rate. I calmly explained, "Ma'am, my system shows me you were here for an hour and a half." She crossed her arms and said, "Yes, but I only intended to stay for 20 minutes. I tried to keep it light, replying, "I understand, but the system records the actual time part, not your intentions." She insisted, "But I didn't plan on being here that long." I nodded and explained, "That's understandable, but you were actually here for an hour and a half." After about 5 minutes of back and forth, where I patiently explained how the rates worked and how parking charges are based on the actual time spent in the lot, she still didn't get it. She finally sighed, exasperated, and said, "So I'm being punished for not predicting my exact parking time." I chuckled a little and replied, "Not punished, just charged based on your stay. I promise it's not personal." Wild. Story 18. During quarantine 2020, some high stolen items were locked up, and for some reason the sales floor manager gave me. The pharmacy technician led keys to said merchandise. A customer refused to let me touch the merchandise because of germs, even though I was the one who stocked it less than 5 minutes earlier. When I explained that I touched everything in that case already, she yelled at me for being gross and walked off without the product. I went back to the pharmacy and continued with my life without the product being stolen. Story 19. Working at a phone store, I had a customer come in furious because her phone wouldn't charge. I asked if she had tried a different charger, and she said, "No, I don't need to. The one I have is new." After checking her phone, I found it full of lint and dust in the charging port. I cleaned it out, plugged it in, and voila, it worked. She didn't say thank you, just stared at me like I was some kind of wizard and left. Guess dust wasn't part of her troubleshooting plan. Story 20. Former retail worker. The store I worked at through college would do a friends and family event twice a year. If you had a membership or received one of the discount cards, you received 30% off your entire purchase. The receipt showed the breakdown over each item for the discount. There was one woman who would come in every time trying to return one item and would argue with our staff about why she wasn't getting what she paid for it. We'd point to the item and the amount subtracted to it from the discount, and she wasn't having it. Insisted on asking for a manager every time and causing a huge scene. She could never get it through her head that she didn't pay full price for the item. It happened so often that staff would sigh when she'd come into the store because we knew she was going to pull the same stunt. It was exhausting.
That's a wrap for this video. Make sure to leave your relatable story down in the comments. I would love to make a video on them. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.